Great. Well, thank you guys so much for your attention and participation. We'll hopefully you'll learn a few things along the way. I know one of the things that has been absolutely fantastic in working here in the UK, well, in the UK, and getting to come to events like this here in Rome over the last 13 years is the friends and adopted family that I've gotten to have. I would say the Ariks, Hasan and his wife Bridget, I've worked together with Bridget for 10 years. She left me about 3 years ago to go and join Hasan and take the company to the next step. But we're all family and keep things going day in and day out. So it's great to be able to sit on stage here and spend some time with you and learn a little bit more about Redmill. So Hasan, why don't we start by the history? Why did you start Redmill, and what's the proposition?
Sure. Before I get to that, you mentioned that I now work with my wife. I have to say, in the last 25 years in the industry, that was the biggest risk I took. Because, 3 years ago, decided to work with my wife, and we're still married. It's still working out. Before Redmill, I spent almost 20 years at Mediacom, Group M, and I started the industry as a software developer. So by background, I'm a software engineer. But in the last almost 30 years, the transition has happened from being a software guy to being a media person and then marketing person. So having at Mediacom literally worked with all the big advertisers you can imagine, a few names like P&G, Shell, VW. And again, we were trying to solve the same problems. And again, we were having to spend so much time on the very basic tasks like collecting data. And it came to a point where you thought, okay, there has to be a better way of collecting this data. There has to be a better way of cleaning this data. And so that's how we started, which was our goal number one is collect and clean the data in an efficient way.
Yeah, and it's not something that can be done just from, APIs, plugging in. Where does all that data sit?
I love, almost everybody who comes from the digital background goes, APIs, ad servers, Google, YouTube, surely you can just plug into them and get the data out. True, you can. That's the easiest part of the job. The truth is, there are still, all agencies around the world has finance systems where all the transactional data sits. They all have their internal planning systems. Mm-hmm. They all have their local research systems. So if you go and collect competitive data from China, it comes in Chinese. Mexican data is in Spanish. Mm. And your very basic task is translate it into English.
Interesting.
Right. Now, so if the task is, let's take one stream of data, clean it, and then report on it, it's relatively easy.
Right.
So you can say, let's take Facebook data, let's put it into a dashboard, like you would do in Datorama, right? And out comes fantastic looking dashboards. But if you then say, okay, let's merge that Facebook data, like let's say videos, and merge it with YouTube data. Now, at the least, you have some challenges around, are the names the same? Mm-hmm. Are the campaign IDs the same? So all the basic problems. And then you go, actually, is the YouTube's definition of viewability
the same as Facebook?
The same as the Facebook's.
Right.
So you then go on to, once you've done the hygiene, you then go on to the next phase of the process, which is, does this data mean the same thing for the business?
Right.
And that's where the value add is. And then you put the next layer on, which is, okay, could we put some machine learning behind this to then start predicting, what am I going to be doing with my advertising? So we take the advertisers basically going from all the way from the very basic tasks of data hygiene all the way to being able to have some market intelligence on their data.
Interesting. And in terms of recency of the data, like how up to date is it as it comes in? I mean, I would assume a lot of it's coming in on Excel spreadsheets as most planners still are building the plans in Excel.
Again, if your background is digital, people say you can get your latest numbers down to the second. Fantastic.
Yep.
Is there somebody that's actioning it? No. Depending on your data source and depending on what processes that needs to go through, and quite often, it's not the technical process that it needs to go through, it actually needs to go through other processes for people to make decisions on.
Right.
And in our company, we have operations teams, we have technical teams around the world, in China, Turkey, and here. Well, here being London. We seem to forget that we're in Rome. We promise to deliver everything within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
And we don't just do that with media plans, we don't just do that with competitive post-campaign, we do it with many, many data sets. We also do it with things like traditionally, what an auditor, your typical auditor may take 3 to 6 months to deliver, we actually deliver them within days.
Okay.
Which is very different because once you establish the path of the data and you establish the business rules that data needs to go through,
right,
you can apply the same rules again and again.
Yep.
And that makes the process incredibly fast.
Interesting. Yeah, that's and then, but how are you making sure that the data is accurate? Like, there's got to be a tremendous amount of checks that you've got to go through in order to.
The term accurate is relative.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about, is a media plan accurate?
Yep.
And that you receive, you go, okay, surely that's the planner's job to make it accurate.
Sure.
So there's that, okay, is the core data accurate? And then there's the next stage, which is the process itself introducing some errors in the data? Are we introducing, as a company, as Redmill, introducing some data problems? Then the final question is the data good enough to make business decisions on?
Right.
And quite often, clearly that's the most important question, which is, can you make business decisions on this data? The hygiene parts, which is, are we introducing any errors into the process? Of course, we already do all of those things. And there's plenty of technology that help you solve those problems. But the interesting one is the data good enough for the business decisions? Is the example that we just talked about, which is, how do you make the YouTube viewability data comparable to Facebook viewability data? And the brands maybe need to make some business decisions that says, actually, we need to up the YouTube by 5% to make it comparable. And then actually, if we want to take this viewability of the video online, and we want to compare it to TV viewability,
yep,
or TV views,
right,
then we need to put it through some sort of touch point, some sort of effectiveness ROI study that says digital is worth 30% compared to TV, which may be 70%. And I don't know if you guys were here on the earlier panels, that the TV still has the highest ROI. So what we do is bring the data to the advertiser so they are able to make these decisions. We're not sitting there and saying every brand should be comparing these numbers in this way,
right,
but we're making it visible so that they can.
So essentially, by format or by channel, whether it's on a desktop, a mobile phone, or a TV, you're able to do some kind of media equivalency, kind of calculation or factoring on that.
Around the world, we work with almost 100 countries. Okay. Probably possibly higher. We have hundreds, if not millions, of data points in our systems coming through the advertisers. Yet, because media came to what it is today through local processes, media in every country is still very, very different. And when you go beyond the digital media, traditional media is incredibly different if you go from Italy to Spain to Germany to UK to US. Right. So all those countries have a lot of local nuances that you have to deal with. And that goes from unit formats, third-second equivalents, to a TV in US, maybe local TV, national TV. So even the media types themselves don't match up. Right. So yes, you do have to deal with all those. At the same time, when you're dealing with the normalization process, so you take the locals and linking up to the global, you still need to remember that the system needs to be usable to the local guys as well. Right, so you got to essentially translate it back into... So when the local guys are using it, still needs to speak in the language that they understand. Sure. Right? So you can't just say, this is the global standard, let's stamp everything with the global standards. Got it. So, I mean, going back to kind of global standards and currencies, obviously, Nielsen is pretty much recognized, as well as ComScore around the world, as
the big guys in terms of setting the currency and the valuation for media. But what is it that you've seen as you've got, as you said, you're receiving plans from all over the world, 80 to 100 countries. It's got to be a pretty significant challenge in terms of dealing just with the currency of the media.
I think there were two questions in there. I'll try to answer both of them, which is the actual exchange rates, the currency side of things. Every company works differently, and most advertisers will have an annual exchange rate.
Okay.
But then, if you go through any kind of big financial crisis like we did,
Brexit,
like Brexit, and the pound devalues, and if anybody's looking at the UK data in US dollars, they will see a big dip when the pound dropped the exchange rates. We handle, of course, exchange rates. We also handle what we call fixed exchange rates, where you can look at all the historical data of one country based on this year's exchange rates, therefore not being influenced by currency exchange. Exchanges going up and down. The other question that I think it was in there was the Nielsen data and Comscore. Nielsen, as you all know, is the world's largest research company, but they became to be Nielsen through local acquisitions. So in effect, what you may know as Nielsen data is actually a whole collection of localized, very localized research data that's actually all been formed into one. So there is no global Nielsen data.
So it's not apples to apples if I'm comparing Poland Nielsen panel versus US.
And it is so not comparable is that if you take a UK, if you think about competitive data, if you take UK's competitive data, that tends to be within 10-15% to actuals. If you go to Scandinavia, quite often that can go as much as 50% upwards. That's again Nielsen data. If you go to US, quite often they will underestimate the digital spend. Right? So when you're a global advertiser or a local advertiser, you want to look at your competitive data, you want to be able to deal with all these local nuances and actually adjust for it. I mean, another good example is Greece. The Greece TV data comes from a different research company who has a completely different methodology than print data. So if anybody does competitive analysis in Greece, it will look like people are over-investing into digital. It's just a difference in methodology that actually overestimates the value of print.
So it's like when the French IAB used to say, we're doing this many billions in euros in digital, but actually they weren't taking discount exceptionnel into the equation to get the net.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
So being able to understand what the actual real numbers that are going to working media.
Exactly. So if you have somebody sitting in the global team, an econometrics team, and their task is to do econometrics based on all this data coming from around the world. Not only do they have the task of, okay, how do I collect this data? The second one is, how do I deal with all the local nuances of this data to be able to make a business decision that says the ROI on these media types in these countries works in this way. Then before it gets to that point, the data really needs to go through the hygiene factor. And that's what we provide.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about deal management. I know this is something that's obviously important. How are the brands ensuring that the agencies are delivering on the promise of what they're guaranteeing as part of the pitch process?
I mean, this one is very close to my heart because when a pitch happens, and like I said, having spent almost 20 years at the agency side, when a pitch happens, the agencies they really want to win that business. Of
course.
Right? And quite often they will go out and say, make all these promises that says, we'll give you 5%, we'll give you 15%, we'll give you X% savings from last year. And quite often, they will fail. Now, quite often, the advertiser, the brand will miss the fact that the agency failed to deliver. And quite often, when they do realize it, it's already too late to make a difference. So these key
because they're getting the data that's 6 months old.
Because Nick, I'm sorry to say this, but because the audit firms are way too slow to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. They deliver, it takes them forever to close the year and deliver the end results. And by the time that the results are delivered, it's already too late to go on the year.
Change the chart of the ship.
So what we provide is we've looked at the whole data stream that's going through, and we looked at, okay, what business rules does this data need to go through for it to be able to deliver, or at least give a prediction of where the agency is going to be. So not only we look back and deliver on what the agency has promised, we also actually predict whether the agency is going to deliver or fail before it happens. And we do that on a monthly basis. And our turnarounds are literally a week.
Interesting.
Of actually getting the data.
So I guess one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in the industry now is the CFOs and other members of the C-suite are beginning to drill in on driving brands to big multinationals to zero-based budgeting. So how is this impacting the industry? What are the big implications of this for the global heads of media and the CMO ultimately, who's responsible for looking in the eyes of the CFO and saying that, hey, that $1 billion that you gave me, I put it to good use?
Every year there's a new term that comes up, right?
Yep.
So the zero-based budgeting is the latest one. I don't understand why. Didn't the marketing teams had to justify what they were spending before? Maybe not. But the latest on the zero-based budgeting is, the large advertisers want to justify that what they're spending is working, and they want to be able to control it, right? And now, to be able to go through that process and make that decision really, really proactively, first of all, they need to come up with a model that works for them. A model may take anywhere from 3 months to a year and a half to actually decide, okay, this is the way we're going to measure the ROI on media.
Yep.
And then based on that ROI model, you can then say, this is how we're going to control the budget. Let's deal with the first side of the problem, which is how do you create the model? And the second one is how do you then control on a repeatable basis, because you don't want to spend 3 to 6 months or 18 months every year to go through this process, is how do you make it repeatable? The first portion, to be able to come up with the model, you need really good, clean data.
Right.
And the second one is repeatable. Now, in both of those cases, if the company has been working with us, they already have clean data that they can create the models on.
Yeah.
And the second one is we make it very repeatable because their data is always up to date in a single place. And that data goes all the way from competitive to plans to actuals to sales data.
Interesting. Yeah. So when you kind of, put on your, look into the crystal ball and are kind of looking at where the industry is going, what do you see as next? What's the kind of the future developments for the industry when it comes to media measurement, but also where are you guys going as a product roadmap without delivering too much competitive intelligence? Okay,
well, if I said to you, I started media in 1991.
Yep.
And we are still solving the same problems that I was employed to solve in 1991.
Okay, so that's...
So first of all, it's the industry hasn't really moved that much in dealing with some of its core problems.
Got it.
In terms of what I'd love to see the industry do is stop talking about transparency, stop talking about trust, actually establish something that actually gets rid of all those issues. First of all, I think the agency, the brand trust problem needs to be resolved, one way or another. Pay the agencies enough money so they don't have to steal it somewhere else. Yeah, it's fundamentally that's what the root of the problem is. In terms of, I apologize again if that's offending anybody in the audience, but in terms of the data, the arrival of digital has made the data so visible that people started to pull people like me out of the closet and say, you need to talk. I'm like, sure, but I was here 15 years ago. I've been telling you this all along. The data is important. Let's get to clean data. Let's get to good data.
Yep.
And let's actually start building some business intelligence on it. So us as a company, our future is in machine learning. So that's what we're doing. So we've spent a long time going through the data cleaning process, collection process, and for us, it's the value is we're now using machine learning to actually predict things before they happen so that we can warn our clients.
So potentially you could, if you brought in existing sales data and married that aside with your media spend data by market, and you began to do forecasting, the holy grail of being able to tell the CEO he can get or she can get 2 more points of share in a certain category if you spend X in
I can tell this. I can tell this much, which is we can do it more consistently, working through a model that is iteratively improving, so that we can take the client, the brand through the whole journey. So, how is the brand manager currently doing? The brand manager has a few numbers, and they're going, I think my competition is going to do this. I think if I do this, I might get more sales. Now, if you put real science behind that and say, let's start putting these numbers together. Let's put a predictive model that says, if these conditions happen, if unemployment is predicted to go down by X%, that may have an impact of X. If the currency rate in the UK is going to go up by something else, this is the historical behavior of the relationship between exchange rates and the sales data is this, and consumer spending is this. So when you bring these numbers together, we're not pretending to be, we will create these models, but we're creating the environment where these models can be created and actually executed on.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so for me, machine learning is going to be the future.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Thank you, Hasan. Any
absolute pleasure.
Any questions from the audience? Ollie.
Hey. Hi, Hasan.
Hiya.
I just wanted to ask, obviously, in order to aggregate all of that data into one place, presumably you need a lot of people to play ball through the value chain, and when you're talking about hundreds of markets around the world. One, I suppose, how do you get all of those people to play ball and integrate, whether through API or otherwise? And two, how disruptive has it typically been for your clients as they start to see that aggregated data view?
Really good question. If I said to you, I failed doing this at least 5 times in the past, I would not be lying, because we've tried all wrong ways of doing it, especially if you're disruptive, especially if you go into a market and say, oh, I want all your data, by the way, you're going to have to spend 2 days a month delivering it to me. So fundamentally our first approach is it has to be zero impact. So for us, when we go into a market, we say, you literally have to do nothing other than send us whatever you have. So first of all, make it easy for them. Secondly, the data ultimately belongs to the advertiser. So if the advertiser says, I want to collect this data, it is their call. And through the process down the line, of course, you start introducing best practices and say, when the advertiser starts realizing, actually, we need to put some global standards around KPIs, we need to start collecting at least, if we're collecting spend on digital, let's at least put some performance beyond it. So the client, the advertiser starts actually seeing the best practice, and that takes time. Yeah? But initially, you do have to make it very, very simple. You can't go, we're going to make a global change overnight.
And they're coming in via Excel for the most part, right?
Oh, I mean, it depends on the data source. So it could be Excel, it could be an API, it could be a report from the sales system, it could be. So if they don't have a publicly available API, yeah, they are Excel, CSV, absolutely, in any language as well. We currently have close to 2,000 different formats coming into our system. If that sort of like explains some of the problems. Yeah.
Any other questions? Come on. It's kind of a geeky subject, but we like.
I know it's a geeky subject.
Okay. What's your biggest headache in all this? Because you're collecting vast amounts of data round the clock from many, many different countries, different sources, different languages, formats, taxonomies. It's hard. So what is the biggest single obstacle you have now, and what do you envisage the next range of obstacles going to be? I mean, as programmatic develops and addressable TV develops, what's going to be the big hurdles to overcome? Because in theory, what you're saying makes great sense, but it's one hell of a job, isn't it?
It is, and interestingly, the biggest obstacle at the beginning is the brand, because the brands that we talk to quite often are not organized enough to embrace a global standard. So they have no global standard, therefore they need to create a global standard. And whilst they're trying to do that, they get too excited and they push down too much down the line to the locals in terms of you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. And that immediately puts up a barrier in terms of getting the data easily. Down the line, the kind of challenge that we have is when the local data starts being exposed to the global teams start asking questions. And those questions then become the source of, oh, actually don't send the data to the global guys anymore, right? So it could be the procurement guys getting hold of the data and they start questioning the unit prices on TV. In terms of down the line in the future, I think digital is the biggest problem. And the biggest problem is it's because the data is so unreliable. And when you attach the business value to the data, it is incredibly difficult. So although it's the easiest data to get, it's actually the hardest one to put business value on it, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Would you, I don't know, actually, I'd love to hear your answer to that question as well.
I just think programmatic data, digital data, and eventually television delivered digitally data is going to be the big headache, because there will be so much of it, and not all of it will be classifiable, categorizable, simple. So that when television goes big as an internet delivered medium, I think that's going to be your biggest challenge, because you're going to be talking about a completely different scale of data coming through down the pipes, and that's going to be, if you can get on top of that, then you'll be a massively wealthy man one day.
We have about 2 minutes left. Any final remaining questions? No? Perfect. Well, with that, Hasan, thank you very much.
Thank you, pleasure.
Yep.